Good evening. I'm Caress Clegg with New Hanover County Schools Communications Division, and I am here this week with Eddie Anderson for the final part of our Facebook Live series Q&A. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for being here with me today. Glad to have you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Mr. Anderson is the Assistant Superintendent of Operations. So he will be here answering all questions related to child nutrition, facilities, and transportation. So any questions that you guys have, please be sure to put them in the chat and we will try to answer them. But we do have questions that have already been brought up by our families in the community. So we're going to go ahead and get started with those. First questions up, Mr. Anderson, are regarding our child nutrition. So could you just tell us a little bit about how the current meal plan operating will look after September 1st?
Absolutely. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. This is a great way to get this information out to our parents and our students, our families, because there are challenges and some changes coming forward. With the meal plan, currently the meal program is serving meals at 44 school locations. We expanded that from 9 schools on August 17th. Each school is providing curbside grab-and-go meals for all children 18 years of age or younger, free of charge. Our kitchens, we're operating at 24 of those school sites, and then we're utilizing our buses to transport meals to the other 20 school sites. On September 1st, we will transition from the Summer Food Service Program to the National School Lunch Program. The overall operation, locations, and delivery times will remain the same. The only difference between the two programs is we are now required to identify each student that receives a meal by that student's name or their PowerSchool number. Students participating in free and reduced price meal program will still receive meals for free. If in reduced price meals will be free. All other students will be required to pay or we will charge their account. However, it's important to note, and I want to make sure everyone understands that our CEP schools, if a student attended a CEP school last year, the status doesn't change. So this year, all kids will still eat at no cost, and a free and reduced meal application is not needed. All of the CEP sites can be found on the Child Nutrition website if you have any questions about that.
Thank you, Eddie, for providing that answer. Just to look about, I know we've been serving meals to our students since March 15th when the governor announced a closure. How many meals have we been able to serve this month?
Right now, we are averaging about 4,500 meals per day. So looking back since March, we've actually served over 850,000 meals. We are quickly approaching the 1 million meal mark. And we'll probably reach that within the next 30 days.
Can't wait to hit that milestone. Now, I know a lot of community members have been wondering in regards to the change, why are we no longer able to use buses to deliver those meals to our students after September 1st?
Right, great question. And we were allowed to utilize our buses and deliver meals into neighborhoods through a federal waiver, non-congregate feeding waiver. That waiver expires on August 31st. And meals after that may only be served in congregate settings where some instruction is taking place. So that's why we've expanded the number of schools and offering curbside pickup at 44 locations now.
Thank you. A question just came in on our Facebook chat. Can a parent or a guardian pick up food for students at a different school, or do they have to go to the school they are enrolled in?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you're allowed to pick up a meal at any school. The
Good to
child
know.
nutrition staff, currently, you can just go and pick up a meal and say that it's for my student or any child 18 years of age or younger. After September 1st, you'll have to provide that student's name and Power School number, but you'll still be able to pick up that meal at any school location.
Thank you, Eddie. So you mentioned that we were under the summer food program during the summer months, and now we're moving into the national food program. So that's why the funding is the way it is. Why are we not able to use budget funds from different budget areas to continue the delivery options?
Well, during the summer, we did have the flexibility in our state transportation funds to use those funds for child nutrition. We no longer have that ability. We don't have that flexibility. The state has not extended that flexibility. But in answering your question, we are using local funds. That is, we're utilizing 15 buses to deliver meals to 20 sites. And we are using our local funds to do that.
I'm on mute there.
There you go.
What is the district doing now in order to kind of meet those needs that we're seeing the loss from the deliveries?
Yes, when since we're no longer able to deliver into the neighborhoods, we expanded from 9 schools to 44 schools, in hopes that it will be easier for families to get to a school. And just like the question we just had from Facebook, you don't have to go to your districted school. You can go to any school and pick up that meal. So by expanding the program, we hope that we'll be reaching more families, and more families are able to take advantage of our program.
All right. So we have a lot of community partners out there who have been helping us along the way. We've had Latino Alliance, who will be joining us during our 7 o'clock hour. We've had Nourish NC. What can some of these community organizations do now to kind of help us get that food out there and to feed more students?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we have reached out to many community organizations, and we're working with them as they transition from their typical summer programs into more of a regular school year programs. There are some organizations that are offering remote learning, and so we're contacting them in hopes of partnering with them. And if we can identify the schools that are participating in that instruction at their facility, then they'll be able to pre-order meals, and we'll be able to deliver those meals to their program. So we've reached out to several organizations, and if there are others, we would love to hear from them, so that if they are offering that instruction at their facility, then we would be glad and really would like to deliver meals to them.
Eddie, who can they contact?
They would contact Eimer Smith in Child Nutrition. She's organizing that.
And for those watching, that is imer.smith@nhcs.net, imer.smith, SMITH, @nhcs.net. Thank you, Eddie, for answering those questions related to child nutrition. To all of those viewing us at home on Facebook Live, if you have any other questions regarding child nutrition, be sure to send those, put those in the chat, and we will get those to Eddie to answer. We want to.
Could I just add one more thing? Because this has been a question. Some parents have said, "Can I pick up meals for other students?" Mm-hmm. And the answer is yes. There's an authorization form that's on our child nutrition website, mm-hmm. and or you can pick that up at any of the school locations. And if you'll fill that out, it's just the parent of that student is authorizing another person to pick up the meal for them. And with that form, you could pick up multiple meals for other children.
Eddie, thank you. That is vital information to get out to our families, and I know that they will be happy to have that. That will help a great many of our families who are working during the day or who may have younger kids who aren't able to get out. So I'm glad to hear about that authorization form that you can find on the Child Nutrition website. Now, shifting gears a little bit and moving to transportation, because that is part of your realm as well, Eddie. Can you tell us what is transportation going to look like in Plan B, and what have our bus drivers been doing to prepare for the transition?
Yeah, absolutely. It is going to look a lot different. To promote social distancing, will require one child per seat on the bus. Exceptions can be made for siblings and family members. But to account for the reduction in bus capacity, families should expect limited seating, and we'll be enforcing safe walk zones. We'll be combining several individual stops and creating more community stops. So students within neighborhoods, if we had 5 or 6 bus stops, that's going to be condensed to maybe 1 or 2. So we are asking students and families to walk a little further to that bus stop. But that's really critical in allowing us to make these runs quicker. With the lower capacity, we're going to have to double up runs. And the only way we can do that and get the kids to school on time is to have faster runs. The other thing you'll notice is all K-12 students riding the bus must wear face covering. If a student arrives at a bus stop and doesn't have a face mask or face covering, the bus driver will provide one for them. We'll have hand sanitizer available on the bus for mainly employees and older children. And but perhaps the most important change, and what I really would hope to communicate to parents, is that families will be required to complete and submit a parent guardian attestation form before they can utilize our bus transportation services. The attestation form is available on our website. It's also available from your student's school. And each student must have the attestation form on file before utilizing bus transportation services. And without the form, the student will not be permitted to board the bus. And what the attestation form says is that the parent or guardian will check the student's temperature and symptoms before allowing them to leave the home and go to the bus stop. The health department says that is by far the best way to prevent the spread of COVID. And we don't want the situation where a student arrives at a bus stop, presents symptoms, and have to send that student home not knowing what if someone's there or not. So the attestation form says that parents will do that at home, and then they'll come to the bus stop. We'll take them to school, and at school, all students, bus drivers or bus riders, walkers, car riders, all students will be screened before they go into the school building.
And Eddie, can you repeat, or I don't know whether you mentioned how often that attestation form has to be filled out?
Yeah, great question. It only has to be filled out once. You're attesting that for the duration of the 2020-21 school year, you will do that as long as your child is riding the bus.
Thank you. And again, that form can be found on the district's website on our transportation tab under the NHGS Ready, Set, Return page. You can also get that form from your schools as well. Thank you, Eddie, for providing that information. So you talked about the buses and the changes. Just one question that's come in. How many students are going to be allowed to be on the bus?
Yeah, well, a typical elementary or typical bus carries 72 passengers. There's 24 seats. So capacity will be reduced to 24 students. That's one student per seat, unless there are siblings. And then we could double up siblings and family members. So that is the main reason that it's so important to consolidate stops and shorten these runs.
Thank you. And you mentioned that the attestation form, and you mentioned there'll be hand sanitizer on the buses. Are there any other screening procedures that bus drivers or monitors will be conducting before students get on the bus?
No, there will not be any other screening. Once the attestation form is on file, then yeah, to begin with, bus drivers will check student names. It's going to be a real challenge for bus drivers. Typically, they I would say within the first couple of weeks they get to know their students by name and recognize them. But under Plan B, there'll be a different group of students each week. So drivers, not only would they have to learn 3 different routes, but they're going to have to learn 3 different groups of students. So be patient with them. I'm sure they will very quickly learn all the students' names and faces. But to begin with, they will be checking to make sure by student name that the attestation form is on file.
Thanks, Eddie. Last year, it was no secret. There were some shortages with bus drivers, and then we had families who were experiencing their students getting to school late. What steps has the district taken to improve that, and are there any concerns about that going into the 2020-2021 school year under Plan B?
Yeah. Well, I will say that COVID-19 has required us to rethink bus transportation plans. And we've used this as an opportunity to make some all-around improvements. The bus driver shortage last year affected our substitutes most. And last year we averaged about a 9% absenteeism rate per day. And we didn't have the substitutes to cover those routes. This year, we're planning on shorter runs. We're planning on doubling up runs, and we're going to reduce the overall number of buses and drivers needed each day. This will allow us to create that substitute pool to cover daily absences and any emergencies. With the shorter runs, it enables us to double up runs. And as an example, School A, this one bus will pick up students, let's say from the outer ring first, drop them off, and then make the shorter run second on the inner ring. And so we'll be able to pick up kids and get them to school more efficiently. And most importantly is get them to school on time each day. In the past, when we had to double up runs, it was a reaction to an absenteeism that the bus driver had to run the normal run and then do a second run, and it was impossible to get that second run done on time and to get the kids on time. Now that we've built that into the model, we'll be able to respond to that, and we'll have the substitutes on hand each day that can be on those buses and start on time.
So we had a question that just came in from Facebook, and it's in regard to the attestation form. So we know they need it to get on the bus in the morning. Do parents also need to complete that form if their child is only riding the bus in the afternoon?
Yes, if a student is going to be riding the bus at any time, morning, afternoon, periodically or different days. If the student is going to ride the bus at any time, they do need to fill out that attestation form and get that submitted. The attestation form, you told people where they could find that. We've actually set up an email. It's bus.attestation@nhcs.net. And the form can be emailed directly to that email address, or it can be submitted to your child's school, and they'll email it in.
Thank you, Eddie. Parents are, of course, concerned about the safety precautions that we are taking to sanitize and keep those buses clean in between routes, rides, and day after day. Can you talk to us a little bit about those procedures?
Yeah, absolutely. Each bus between runs, the driver will clean and sanitize frequent touch points, those heavy use areas, doors, windows, grab handles, armrest, door handles, seatbelt buckles. So those will be cleaned and disinfected between each run. And then after the morning route, buses will be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected. And after the afternoon routes, buses will be cleaned and disinfected.
Thank you, Eddie. So those were the questions that we have received from Facebook Live and from our families regarding buses. Now, you also handle facilities and what our buildings will look like. So let's take a little pivot and talk about those. And can you tell us what differences will families and students see when we enter Plan B in our school facilities?
Sure. Our school facilities, I think, are going to look very similar to your neighborhood grocery store, your bank, or retail space. There's going to be a lot of informational signage placed throughout the building. There'll be directional signage as well as floor markings. We are preparing our schools for two-way circulation, providing directional arrows on the floor, stand here markers in front of group toilets or reception areas, anywhere students or parents would typically line up for service. So yeah, they'll look very similar to the businesses that we go into today. There'll be a lot of reminders around, reminding people the 3 W's: wear a face covering, wait 6 feet apart, and wash your hands frequently.
Thank you, Eddie, for sharing that. I just want to remind everyone that this discussion is regarding operations. So that will be Mr. Anderson can answer questions regarding transportation, child nutrition, and facilities. For all other questions that you leave in the chat, we will take those back, get answers for you, and we will update those on our FAQ page on our NHCS Ready, Set, Return page. But next question I've seen come in, Mr. Anderson, are there procedures in place for cleaning and disinfecting our schools?
Excuse me. Yes. In accordance with the CD guidelines, we've really adopted the procedures and their guidance. We have written procedures and daily checklists that our custodial staff will be using to ensure that the health and safety of our students, teachers, and staff is taken care of. We've also made sure that all of the products that we're using are on the EPA's approved list of disinfectants. And then finally, we've actually purchased additional equipment and supplies for custodial use within our buildings. As you can imagine, I think our custodians had a pretty monumental task to clean our buildings under normal conditions. And we need to make sure that these procedures that they've been well trained and that they can be implemented efficiently and keep up with it. So we have purchased some additional equipment to help them with that, and I feel comfortable that they're going to do a great job.
With the shortages that many of us have seen in disinfectant supplies, cleaning supplies, and materials, is the district noticing any of those shortages? Or are we still able to get supplies as we need?
Well, we were very fortunate. Some of those supplies were provided by the state. Some of the funding to purchase those supplies we received very early, and I think we perhaps got out a little ahead of the curve in ordering and stocking up. And so I feel like we're ready for the transition to Plan B. We know that there's a shortage now of PPEs and cleaning supplies. So we do have orders in, and even though they're back ordered, I feel like we'll get those in before we run out of anything.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for responding to that question. So we've had a question come in regarding where students will eat their lunch and breakfast. So will this be in the classrooms? Will it be in the cafeteria? Are we doing grab and go style? What will students be doing?
Yeah, we've actually talked a lot about that, and we know that students, teachers are going to need a break from the classroom. So let me start with breakfast. We are looking at remote points of distribution and sale for our breakfast items. There'll be a grab and go item. There'll be points throughout the building as well as in the cafeteria where students can come in, grab those breakfast items and go to class. At lunch, to start Plan B, we're going to have all students K-12 eating lunch in their classroom. We think it's important for us as a district and for the schools individually to go through one cycle of the 3 groups. Then we'll be better able to tell what changes are possible, and it'll probably give us some new ideas. What we'll be looking at, of course, eating in the cafeteria first. Can we accommodate the students in the cafeteria safely, social distancing? We may look at multiple points within the building, and we may look at some outside opportunities. I know that if it's a nice day, I think kids would appreciate the opportunity to go outside and have lunch. So we're going to be looking at that very closely in the first 3 weeks. But like I said, students will be eating in the cafeteria and eating in their classroom during the first 3 weeks. And during that time, we'll be evaluating ways to expand that.
There any other information or changes regarding facilities that you'd like to share with our families at this time, Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, we talked about how our school facilities would look different. A couple of things that I didn't mention that I think I should. We will have signage, but students will not be allowed to drink directly from water fountains. So, please, families, prepare your students. When you're buying school supplies, get them a water bottle or 2. You will be able to use the water fountain to fill up water bottles. You just won't be able to drink directly from the bottles. And we've placed signage at all of the water fountains, to instruct students. Wherever there are multiple water fountains grouped together, you may see one that's closed off so that you don't have 2 students using those water fountains side by side. If there are 3, we would shut off the one in the center to try to promote that and maintain that social distancing. And we'll probably do the same thing in our group restrooms. If there are 3 sinks, we would shut off that center sink, and we'll have a reduced number of students in the building. So I don't think capacity-wise there'll be a need, but again, it promotes the social distancing and safety of the students while they're in the building. And the other thing that you won't see, but I think it's really important, is while we have not been in our buildings for a while, We have used this as an opportunity to do a lot of preventive maintenance and a lot of tuning up HVAC equipment and making sure that our equipment is running at the optimal level and that we are prepared for students to come back into the buildings. We have looked at our filters, evaluated the MERV rating of the filters, and increased those to what the system would allow. We're changing filters more frequently, and we're also operating our systems differently. We have increased the amount of outdoor air that's coming into our buildings, and we will continue to do that as the number of occupants increases. We really want to maximize the amount of outdoor air and frequency of the turnover of air within our buildings. So that's something that you won't see, but I think it's important for people to know that that's going on.
Eddie, can you talk a bit about just what are some of the greatest challenges that your division and your work group has been experiencing right now as they've been trying to help the district move forward with this transition to Plan B? What are some of the things that have caused the most kind of halt or that you've had to rearrange in order to get our students back in the school buildings?
Wow. The first thing that comes to mind is, when back in March, when this started, I think we may have learned that schools were going to be closed on a Thursday or Friday. Mm-hmm. And the biggest challenge was opening up Wilmington's largest chain of restaurants in a weekend that delivered by bus to multiple neighborhoods, and I'll tell you the community support was outstanding. We would not have been successful in getting that off the ground without them. It took a while, and while we were gearing up, the community was distributing meals, but we knew that was not sustainable. And, within a couple of weeks, we had, buses and drivers, running a very smooth program. The other thing I think that has been a challenge, and people may not think about this as much for school employees as they do for first responders, but, our employees were facing many of the same challenges that our communities and our families were facing. So, we've definitely had some staffing challenges, but I can't say enough about, in particular, our child nutrition staff and our bus drivers, that despite what they were facing at home, we're showing up each and every day to work to make sure that families in our communities were receiving those meals. So that was a challenge, but also a real inspiration to see people respond, in such a caring and positive way.
Thanks for sharing, Eddie. We cannot thank our child nutrition staff and bus drivers enough. They do so much for the district. Just a few questions that have come in from our live chat that we'll see if you can take a hit at. The first one, it says, if we haven't heard back from completing the reduced lunch form, how and when do we know if we are approved or denied?
You can always call child nutrition and check the status of that. I don't know the number offhand for that particular purpose. So let's put that on, let's get the number out there. We'll get the number and put it on a frequently asked question list. But yes, if there is a number, you can call child nutrition and always check the status of that. Matter of fact, you know what? I may have something here.
And just looking that up, that number will be 910-254-4212. Again, that's 910-254-4212. Thank you for that question.
Look at you. You are so good.
I try. Next question that has come in from Facebook. A family wants to know if they are able to donate PPE supplies to the school district.
Absolutely. We've had several donations, and I would suggest that they call Kevin Lee. Kevin is the director of purchasing, and I am going to look up his number since you did so good. Let's see. His number is 254-4116. That's Kevin Lee in purchasing department. He can coordinate that with you.
Thank you for that. And thank you for whoever is wanting to donate. We greatly appreciate that. We can never have too many PPEs to provide safety for our students and staff. The next question I see, let's see. And I don't think you would be able to answer this one, Eddie, but I'll throw it out there just in case. How do I go about making sure my children are all on the same schedule on Plan B? I guess this is for transportation purposes to make sure that they don't have kids alternating on different weeks.
Yeah, that's a good question. We're actually in the process of school principals and data managers are in the process of assigning those groups right now. They are coordinating with other schools, elementary, middle, and high school are all trying to coordinate to make sure that siblings are all in the same group if they're not all attending the same school. But if you have a request for that, I would encourage you to call your child's school because we have had some requests that they all be on different tracks. And while the majority of them all want them on the same track. So I would encourage you to call your school and make that request.
Well, Mr. Anderson, I would like to thank you for being with us here this afternoon, and to my viewers on Facebook Live watching us, thank you for tuning in. That is all the time we have for this evening. Now for our Spanish-speaking families, Mr. Anderson will be on with Latino Alliance starting this evening at 7 o'clock, so you can tune in for this interview again with answers and responses and questions all in Spanish. Thank you guys again, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.